Hello everyone! It is time to claim bones! And bones are gonna be claimed with the most poised blades ever seen in Limbus. For now, we are speaking Poise. With Season 3 ending soonish and all seasonal IDs released, most likely, it's time to check back on the season of Poise and how the archetype is doing after all is received, and especially talk about the latest event addition for Blade Lineage, completing the archetype by Power Creep. What about Bleed? What do you mean? Bleed isn't real, it can't hurt you. Okay, I admit, it's true. Quite a few times this season they desperately tried to associate Bleed with Poise. About, 4.5 times. But let me address the issue right away. The archetype is... Look, it's already gone! Poise has enough issues already to worry about Bleed. But more about this later. This video will have two parts, the first being the newest IDs analysis, and the second the state of Poise after their release. So let's begin with a quick appetizer with Kurokumo Clan Captain Gregor. He is the only instance of not Poise that you'll see in this video, so enjoy it while you can. He is a pure bleed support with average stats. All his skills benefit from high bleed potency on target, but almost only for clash power. With his passive, he wants to take and win clashes to inflict bleed potency. Outside of it, he has low bleed infliction though, and only 1 count infliction on skill 1, so he'll need allies with higher bleed count infliction, which includes Kurokumo Gregor, Wukong Lu, Rhino Meursault, or Pico at his cliff. If the enemy has enough bleed, he'll cripple them with numerous debuff, mainly offense level down, decreasing damage and allowing him to clash even better, and attack power down or the infamous plus coin drop, which are both very strong. However, don't expect to inflict damage with him or even much bleed. His support also acts in a similar way for one ally. Legitimate has a good affinity with him because of maggots increasing count, but will need gluttony support, or if you'll suddenly want day. Overall it says 3 out of 5, he has good clashes and support, but nothing too big. However, the main problem is that the blade archetype is barely working if you don't have ego gifts. Next, let's go to the main dish, with the other 2 stars of the event, Blade Lineage Salsu Don Quixote. This one, like most IDs in the video, relies a lot on its passive for its identity. Here, gaining poise potency grants some to an ally, with the least or no poise potency. This is also the case for skills 2 and 3, skill 3 being for count, and both doubling values for Blade Lineage allies. This obviously means she is a great element for any Blade Lineage comp, but can still work on other Poise comps. Other than that though, she has barely average stats, with lower defenses but higher speed, and the usual Poise kit, with coin power boost for potency, and higher damage on crit for skill 3 last coin. That also means she has barely enough Poise for herself. And if she can't get crits, she can't activate most of her skills' actual effects, leaving her with her passive, which is not much. Her support can be strong to allow one ally stacking potency faster though. Wishing Cairn is her only ego of note, which has the passive made for her, with her skill 3 also capitalizing on kills. She'll just need Wrath for it too, but nothing too big. Overall, she has some potential, but conditions and poise in general makes her average at best. I'll keep the notation for later, you'll see why. To accompany her, we have Blade Lineage Salsu Faust, 3 stars this time. She has more frail and offensive stats. Her skills 1 and 2 follow the basic Poise kit. Gain count on use, barely enough, gains coin power with enough potency, and has some damage bonus on crit for coin 1 of skill 2. Where she does differentiate herself though, is on her unique status effect, Red Plum Blossom. On critical hits, some of her coins and her passive will inflict Red Plum Blossom on the target. This status increases damage on critical hits proportional to its value, as well as inflicting some bleed. This can lead to massive amounts of bleed infliction as well as damage increase with enough count. However, this status decreases on every hit, meaning it will go down very fast and can only be maintained by Faust. She will mostly increase the count with her skill 3 and maintain it with her passive. Her skill 3 can inflict all 10 max stacks at once, but needs to crit for this. Well, luckily, this skill gives her poise potency by half of her count, which also means your already hard to maintain count might not yield a lot of potency, as well as making the maintenance even harder. The payoff though is great, as Red Plum Blossom at full stacks can inflict a ton of bleed on crits, as well as allowing her to inflict additional debuffs, making her the cornerstone of the Poise Bleed duo. The additional crit chance on the status might also allow non-Poise IDs to crit, but it is unreliable. If she isn't the only one hitting the target though, she won't be able to maintain the count, making it more of a burst infliction. She will also need bleed count to allies to benefit from it, Pico Discleave or Yesang being the prime examples. However, her Poise gain is still subpar, and she'll need support to fully bloom. Otherwise, her support is okay for Poise allies to add damage, and she doesn't have much synergies with her Egos. So overall, pretty high potential, but really needs support. And finally, for dessert, Blade Lineage mentor Meursault. The French got what is probably the most broken ID in the game right now. The fun thing is, it is broken in one comp and one comp only, which is a Blade Lineage one. But let's talk about the ID first. Look at those walls of text surpassing those of Middle Dawn and Captain Ishmael. They look intimidating, but luckily they can be easily summarized. Skill 1 and 2 work in the same way. They both give a buff to other Blade Lineage allies that increases the power of their skills of the same rank by the count. So skill 1 increases skill 1s and skill 2 other skill 2s. The number of allies buffed increases with highest absolute resonance, and if you have a full Blade Lineage team, the count is doubled. Because both skills are Pride, you mainly want Pride resonances. Other than that, the skills are basic Poise skills with good values and a power up on Clash Win for skill 2. The other reason you want Pride resonance is for its passive. It is divided in two parts. The In Memoriam part, which gives himself strong buffs when enough Blade Lineage allies are dead, and Swordplay of the Homeland, which is the actual more classic passive. First, it gives him a zombie passive one time, allowing him to not die for one turn once. Then it gives Poise potency and count each time he gains potency or count. You see the deal? The fun part is, not only it is targeted to only Blade Lineage allies, making it irrelevant on anyone else, but targets IDs with the least Poise so they can maintain it more easily. It even doubles it if you have a full 6 Blade Lineage team, which can negate most of their trouble getting it. But wait, there's more, as he has another unique buff, Swordplay of the Homeland, which is like another Poise current power condition for skill 1 and 2, and additional damage bonus on crits for all skills. This also stacks with skill 1 and 2 buffs, being able to give insane power increase to other Blade Lineage IDs. You see BL Sinclair? You see skill 2? Yes, the 8, 10, 12 one. Well, now it's a 11, 14, 17. Might go higher, with higher crit damage. So he pretty much enables the whole crew by himself. But let's finish with his nuke. His skill 3. Yield My Flesh is the first negative coin skill on an otherwise fully positive idea. But that's because you want to lose the clash with it. Which is not even easy, because it rolls 12 at minimum, and up to 20. The skill itself is pretty decent, even if you hit, with high damage multipliers from Poise potency. But the kicker is when you lose the clash. After getting hit, he will counter with to claim their bones, one of the most powerful skills in the game. I mentioned to his base counter, which is okay, giving him good buffs. But this is insane. Not only is it already 56 damage all coins added, it has insane damage multipliers which can go up to plus 105%, not counting the 20% from crit. And this on up to 3 targets, inflicting all of them with 5 paralysis next turn, even without the crit. This is insane. Even if you only hit one target, you just get one more 100% bonus just for the giggles. What the heck? And all this on top of actual bruiser stats. And you can't get staggered while doing it, removing this possibility, or even killed with the passive. So to summarize, we have an ID enabling a wall archetype by himself, who can also hit like the biggest truck, while tanking and crippling enemies. Well, as a side note though, his support does increase damage on crit, and ego-wise, while Regret is fueled but doesn't work on to claim their bones, it still works on skill 1 and 2, so it's still a valid option. But overall, this ID enables a whole archetype by himself, carrying the whole Blade Lineage crew on its back. So 2.5 out of 5 for Dawn, 2.5 out of 5 for Faust, and Meursault gets 5 and can add 2 world points to any BL ID. So that should be enough for the IDs. As you may have guessed, the Blade Lineage faction is in full bloom. In fact, they might be the first faction to have a really strong synergy between each other and making them a very powerful and viable archetype. Some already had some interactions, like W Corp, Zwei or Middle, but those were very limited by their numbers or strengths. Here, we have Meursault carrying the whole crew on its back. You can add some support like Captain Ishmael, and you have an extremely strong looking team. But what about it is strong? Is Poise really strong? Is the Blade Lineage comp the only one to be able to use it, or does it carry them? Let's analyze that right now. So let's talk about Poise. I already talked about it in my archetypes video, so you can check what I say there. But basically, maintaining the count sucks, higher potency doesn't mean stronger effect, just less unlucky to get a payoff, which is underwhelming even at 20 plus. The way it works could be a way to negate scene and type resistances, but the way it is implemented into IDs doesn't. But before getting into that, here's a list of IDs in the game right now able to gain Poise. Now let's remove the ones who don't benefit from it at all, like no uncrit effects or coin power. And I'm generous to leave BLOTs in there. As you can see, quite a few IDs are able to gain Poise, but only get the 20% damage increase from it. Well, I guess that's something, right? We still take it. Well, I guess we do take it. But that doesn't mean they'll get the 20% damage increase everywhere. Only sometimes, randomly, or even never. And they could have had directly useful passives like Sinclair instead of getting Poise. Most Poise IDs only have one instance of damage increase outside of usual crits, which is funny, because it could have been really different from Charge in that aspect. Charge would be the resource you gain and then discharge all at once, which it mainly is, and Poise a more consistent source of damage, raising it slash by slash, increasing your damage as you carefully maintain the count. You know, like Poise, which is what it was supposed to be. However, Poise does not only have count, it has potency, which actually doesn't increase the literal potency, but the chances of it happening. We love RNG. And in the end, the main goal of Poise is still to pray to maintain the count until you get that sweet plus 100% damage. As I said, it could have also been a pretty unique mechanic to go around the weaknesses mechanics, but it doesn't. In fact, the Poise mechanic is weird. But to understand that, we have to go into details for Limbus damage calculations. So it's time for math! Yay! Everybody loves math! Why do I feel so alone right now? So about the damage calculations. Here is a simplified formula. You take the coin value, multiply it by static multipliers, and then again by dynamic ones, and add flat bonuses if needed. Those multipliers contain the different numbers you can see here and there in the menus. Static includes weaknesses and resistances, offense-defense levels, clash bonuses, observation levels, yes there is a bonus for that, and what concerns us, critical hits. All those values are additive and constitute a percentage. So for example, Twin Hook Gregor, which has a 2 times blunt weakness, has a plus 100% multiplier. He has 37 defense at level 40, so if he gets hit by a 42 offense level, the difference adds about 16%. So the multiplier becomes 116%. He has a 0.5 slash resistance too, so if he gets hit by a slash effect, the multipliers will be 75%. Why 75% and not 50%? Because the game is a big liar. But back to crits. Hitting a critical hit increases this multiplier by 20%. That means that hitting a 0.5 resistant enemy with a crit almost nullifies its resistances. Neat, right? Except that hitting a weakness is still 2 times more efficient. But about the dynamic multiplier, this one includes pretty much everything else. Notably skill and coin effects, as well as passives, buffs and debuffs, and those are all also additive. So this does include the plus 100% damage on the coins on critical hits. Or does it matter? Well, it's about how those two interact with other elements. Let's take 2 prime examples for simplicity. W Dawn and BL Sinclair. W Dawn's rip space on full power makes 95 with all its coin added. Strong. BL Sinclair's to claim their bones does 26. But if you first add the crit, and then the plus 150% damage, you get 78. Not as big, but still very respectable. The problem being getting it, but let's get back to the point and play with those numbers. First, let's add 4 fragility. You know, like a quick suppression. This directly multiplies Dawn's Rip space by 1.4, making it 133, so a flat 38 damage increase. Meanwhile, Sinclair's S3 gives a plus 40% on top of the already massive 150%, making the multiplier 2.9. So the final result becomes 90, so 12 damage, so about 15% damage increase. So synergies with setups and statuses is not really strong. However, the fun part is, let's hit a 2 times weakness, like a stagger. Dawn's Rip space will have its damage double, so 190, reminding once again that the best status infliction is stagger. But Sinclair's skill will add its 20% on crit to the 100% of stagger, so 2.2, and then be multiplied by the 2.5 skill effect multiplier for 143 damage, so about 83% increase, which is still less increase than Dawn's Rip space. Because this type of implementation increases damage on both multipliers, any subsequent added values to those will become less effective. And the funny thing is, even if you can contest the wording on BL Sinclair's skill, which would make him even worse to be fair, this is how it is described on every ID now. The only part where it can be more beneficial is when increasing the base damage of the coin, as the multipliers will also, well, multiply this addition. However, highly increasing the base power is, let's say, harder than adding multipliers. So the implementation is not that great. If they balance units around critical hits, they'll suffer from lesser scaling afterwards when they already don't have much. But surely it wouldn't matter if the units using it were very strong, would it? Well, about that. Taking again the charge comparison, because it's the most similar status, even if Dawn's teleport is great, charge IDs don't need it to be able to reach their full potential. Poise, though, it's harder. First of all, most Poise IDs at release just couldn't maintain their count, and had very low payoffs. No or very low damage multipliers. But surely they'll learn from it, right? Well, Upfix 4 sure was a boon to them, especially BL ones. But even then, gaining and maintaining count outside mirror dungeons still sounded like an uphill battle. Sisyphus side is, only BL Sang helped, as he was a source of count gain, for one ID. And it didn't help that even then, the payoff was still lower than, let's say, I don't know, charge. But now, with a ton of additions, was it fixed? Individually first. For the old ones, well, no. For the new ones, well, still no. For 2 stars, I don't think a single ID can maintain their count by themselves while also increasing potency, so that's a hard nope. And even then, payoffs still aren't incredible. I guess I can still mention, for example, LCCP Ryoshu, High Rupture and Tremor Infliction. For 3 stars, most don't. I'd like to mention some of the latest IDs and how they gain Poise. Well, Pico Discliffe, BL Faust, and Sinclair at least. While most IDs gain Poise potency and count awkwardly at the same time, those gain almost only Poise count on their skills, except one where they gain a bunch of potency at once to unleash really strong effects. Well, for most of them. As they don't increase their potency naturally, it's easier for them to keep their count, as they will rarely use it on worthless crits and can keep it for when it really matters. Though even then, their gain of potency isn't enough to be entirely reliable, or it just removes all their count. Remember, if it's not over 20, you're in the claws of Lady Chance. Outside of them, barely any IDs can gain both potency and count reliably, missing one of them. Even Mentor Meursault might have trouble without a second slot. As for egos, right now there are 5 egos in the game having Poise in their text. So let me review them real quick, in release order. The first one was Otis Sunshower, giving herself a lot of Poise count and potency on clashes afterwards. Pretty strong selfish egos that just lacked a proper ID. It mainly allows her to inflict thinking though. The second one, quite a while after, was Ryoshu's Blind Obsession, functioning mostly in the opposite way, gaining potency with a count passive, but this time with charge added. Both of these egos are good, but like stronger Poise IDs. And then Ishmael's Blind Obsession, the first and only Poise Support ego, granting Poise count to random allies depending on the number of targets hit. However, this makes it unreliable as targets are random and the total depends on target numbers. So while welcome, it isn't decisive. Finally, Heathcliff's Holiday isn't really a Poise ego, though it can help Heathcliff. So whatever. So finally, Dawn's Wishing Cairn only offers her Poise when killing bleeding enemies. So can you notice? There's no Poise only egos. In fact, there's barely any mainly Poise egos, most if not all being mostly supports for other archetypes. So individually, that's it. But as a team, how is it? Do they complement each other? Well, Poise is a selfish status. IDs only gain it for themselves and their damage, not others. So to think about Poise teams, you need to think about IDs and egos giving Poise to allies. So the cornerstone to any of those teams are those IDs. Ishmael's Blind Obsession can be too, but it is hard to rely on. I'm sure you forgot Spirodian, but our passive giving shield to Poise IDs can be useful, especially with IDs like Pico Discliffe. BL Yisang, while being one of the best Poise IDs, especially with Meursault, is the original Poise bench member with his support helping with count. Kurokumo Gregor and Pico Yisang give respectively Pierce and Bleed support to Poise IDs, while LCCB Ryoshu gives Poise to AMO units. But the main ones are those three. Starting with Captain Ishmael, she does give Poise potency and count to allies with passive and skill 3, though only skill 3 gives count, and funnily enough, she doesn't benefit from it herself. Her support gives some too. However, not only is she targeting the allies with the least SP, so close to random most of the time, but the conditions are killing enemies, or staggering for skill 3, making her really useful only on fights with multiple targets. A node to assist attack, allowing a free skill to an ally, which is great for Poise IDs. BL Dawn is a new support, who can give quite a bit of potency to some allies, especially with her support. Even though on the field she can, but will require to crit herself. Finally, I have talked enough about BL Meursault already. Just remember his support is restricted to BL allies, and his actual support doesn't give Poise. I mentioned too to BL Faust Red Plum Blossom, which does increase critical chances and damage. So what team can you do with this? Well, first, you can build one unit with Poise who receives a support like BL Faust or Kurokumo Gregor. As for Poise-centered teams, there are 3 possibilities for me right now. The Lineage members being included in all of them, as they are the ones using it best for now. So the first one is obviously the full BL team. 6 BL members with some Poise support. Meursault will give enormous buffs to the whole team with his passive, Dawn helping him. As long as you remember to keep the passive active most if not all of the time, aka always have a 3 Pride Resonance, it will work very well. Using skill 1s or 2 together with Meursault is important too, trying to have high absolute res for those skills buffs. However, one thing to be careful of is that both Faust and Sinclair only have respectively 2 and 1 Pride skills, and especially not their defense skills, so it can become awkward to form chains sometimes. The second team, more full Pride oriented, would be removing some BL members and only have a smaller group of them, either 2 or 3, always with BL Meursault. Having too much might spread the buffs too thin though, as they aren't doubled anymore, so be careful. The first candidate would be BL Yisang, as he is the member with the highest potential with his passive, and skill 1 and defense being Pride. If you want the third, it's up to you, like BL Faust for the status, mainly against bosses, though she doesn't have too much Pride. Otherwise, the rest of the team should include both Pico Discliffe and Ishmael for Pride Resonance and Ishmael's skill 2, Discliffe being a good partner for this. With them there are several possibilities, including Kurokumo Gregor, who has a good Pride synergy with her counter, or Sankotis for Evade and Pride. Sank and BL Sinclair being either high or low speed might often end up on the ends of the chain, not messing up with the resonance. Bullet Otis can contribute to the full Pride resonance easily too, and as I said, other BL members can fill in. Finally, a third team, which I don't know the potential of yet as a disclaimer, would be a Poise and Bleed team. For it, you'd still want the Meursault with Faust, as Red Plum Blossom is a very strong status and she desperately needs Poise support. Then both Pequod 3 stars again, as they would help with Poise and Bleed, especially Heathcliff being able to inflict a ton of count at once after Red Plum Blossom is maxed. For example, full crit skill 2 on a full stacks Red Plum Blossom target will by itself make around 27 bleed with 11 count. Then Twin Hook Gregor can easily benefit from those effects as well, and last slot can be open, like Pequod Descent to increase bleed infliction, though I'd argue his BLID's passive to get count would be more useful, Kurokumo Gregor for increased bleed with Poise, BL done with Wishing Cairn, or even just a more neutral ID with high bleed count infliction to help. Note that it might be possible to include Faust in a less Poise, more bleed team for potency, but Red Plum Blossom might melt really quickly. But even then, it is slow to set up and will probably not be Bleed's saving grace. Also note that all those teams can be lacking on Gloom, which is required by a lot of strong egos, including Blood Obsession, as well as Gluttony, and that most Pride egos are really scarce. Finally, before ending, I'd like to mention something about the way they seem to be doing Poise. Between Captain Ishmael's conditions, Don's Wishing Cairn passive, Ishmael's Blind Obsession, etc., Poise seems more and more suited for regular encounters and overall fights with multiple targets, especially if they are in waves. Since the status applies to the units and not the enemies, they can build it on themselves while killing enemies, as opposed to Rupture and Sinking where you'd want to stack it on one target. This does give Poise an identity different from the others, but shared with Charge though. And that's pretty convenient when you think that Railway 3 does include a bunch of wave fights, which is a great time for me to say that BL members would be very strong for the first 3 stations especially, the third section too maybe, though less because of slash resistances. In conclusion, Poise is in acceptable state, Blade Lineage is in a strong state, and teams with them or Pequod are pretty powerful now. But overall, a lot of IDs like the Pequod Cruise 3 stars or 5 members can be said to be strong, but that's not because of Poise. It's rather that they are strong despite having Poise. But even then, I guess you could say that after this season, Poise caught up to Charge, and maybe they release 1 or 2 more egos with Poise in mind. However, they caught up to Charge. You know, the status who didn't have a full season support yet. Where are we going next already? T-Corp? Oh, yeah, the place with potential charge IDs and whole charge ego gifts made from it. Well, profit from Poise while you still can. And that's the end of the video. Thanks for watching. Final message, thanks you all for the 1k subs. I made a community post for it, but basically I'll start working on more original Abnose animations on each 1000 subs, but that's more for the long term. Before the end of the season, there'll be 1, maybe 2 videos with a stream where I re-rank the IDs for the season, and then we'll see what happens by the end of March. I'm also doing weekly MDs and discussion streams on Mondays now. If you want to get updates, don't hesitate to subscribe and check the community tab. But anyway, see you next time, and keep your sanity high in this slow descent into the inferno.